Hello. So today I'm going to talk a bit about some of the foods that I've tried while living in Korea, in Jeju. But before I talk about this, I would like to emphasize that generally I like to try a lot of different foods. So I'll only be really talking about a few that were very interesting or very different or very strange to me, or ones that I hadn't had prior to coming to Korea. So before I start discussing the foods, I want to talk about two different experiences I had prior to coming to Korea with Korean food. So on two different occasions, I went to a Korean restaurant and I attempted to order a food, only to have the server respond to me that white people don't really like that dish. Um, so on two different occasions in two different restaurants with two different servers, I was told, warned, not to get a food off of the menu. Um, the two foods were altang, which is a soup made of salted pollock roe, not sure which. So it's essentially bundles of fish eggs, so that might be texturally odd to some people. And the other dish was another soup called gamjatang, which is made with the spine bone of a pig. Um, so perhaps people find the presence of many bones in their soup to be off-putting. Um, I'm a very stubborn person, so on both occasions I insisted that I get the food, and both times I enjoyed them. Um, but the point of the story is that I thought these were strange or odd experiences prior to coming to Korea. But upon my arrival and my experience here thus far has been that many Korean people seem to think that foreigners do not enjoy or cannot stand Korean food. Um, so I've had a lot of concerned people try to warn me away from different foods on the on the idea that I would not like the food because I am a foreigner. Once again, I am very stubborn, so I try these foods every time, and 9 times out of 10, I enjoy them. 10 times out of 10, I'm glad that I experienced them, and also 10 times out of 10, I say that I enjoyed the foods, even if I didn't, because I kind of want to break that stereotype that foreigners do not enjoy Korean food. Um, so yes, I like to try new foods, but one barrier to that here has been that the Korean people that I have interacted with tend to think that foreigners do not like their food unless you repeatedly insist that you indeed do. Um, so the first food that I want to talk about is this plate of seafood that I had with friends by the sea. The creatures included in this dish were octopus, which was cooked, abalone, which was also cooked, conch, and monge, which is also known as sea pineapple. I want to elaborate a little bit on the sea pineapple, as many people might not be too familiar with it. So it is a species of Acidiaceae, a marine filter feeding invertebrate, which is more commonly known as a sea squirt, which is not diarrhea on a boat, it's a food. And while the ones we ate here were served raw and sliced to separate the inedible red part from the part that was supposedly edible, I've been also served smaller versions of this, known as warty sea squirts. And in my humble opinion, they taste as delicious as their name would make them sound. Essentially, you bite down and liquid shoots out of them. They're kind of like nature's version of Gusher's fruit snacks, except for they're a bumpy sea testicle. So you start chewing, and it's crunchy and squirty, and I don't ever really look forward to eating these, but they aren't terrible. They have an interesting kind of licoricey or lavender flavor, and the downside to them to me is the texture, which is a little bit weird. But overall, eating this plate of seafood was a great experience. This tiny dish was very expensive. It was around $30, but it is handpicked by Haenyeo, which are the famous Korean women, or the famous Jeju women divers. So eating this seafood is sort of a quintessential part of the Jeju experience. The next thing I will talk about is called yukhae, or beef sashimi, or raw ground beef. It's served with raw egg and abalone, and it would seem like a counterintuitive choice for people who are afraid of dying of dysentery, but it's actually quite delicious, and it's garnished with Kraft singles for some reason. This is a pub food, so it's typically your lower level food that you get with kind of alcohol. But you mix the beef and the egg together, and then you eat it with various sauces and garlic, and it's actually quite delicious. Also in Korea, I've eaten the feet of both chickens and pigs. Chicken feet, or dakbar, is served in a sauce that is so terribly spicy. It is so spicy, in fact, that the first time I went to a dakbar restaurant with foreigners, given that there is another stereotype in Korea that foreigners hate spicy food and cannot handle spicy food, we, the group of foreigners, and I were refused service. Learning my lesson, I went back a second time with a Korean friend and was admitted into the restaurant. However, when we tried to order the chicken's feet, the server said, "Are you sure you want to order these? Because," and then looked at me directly and said, "They are very spicy." Once again, I am stubborn. So I took this as a challenge, and I ate more of the dakbar than my friend did, which was not a smart choice, as my internal organs went on strike the next day. Yeah. On the flip side of chicken's feet are pig's feet. So while I didn't enjoy the chicken's feet very much because they were spicy, horribly spicy, pig's feet are one of my favorite dishes in Korea. There's a little restaurant that I go to near my house, and it's run by the nicest older Korean couple. The pig's feet themselves are steamed or smoked, and they just have this delicious, rich flavor, and they're served with something called jjingbanguksu, which is a mixture of buckwheat noodles, vegetables, and a tangy, spicy citrus sauce. It's so amazing. Less amazing, in my opinion, is bondegi, which is steamed silkworm pupae. While I'm not really opposed to eating insects on a personal level, because I assume it's a good source of protein, this is not something I will likely try again, because in my opinion, it tasted like soggy construction paper. So I would give it a 2 out of 10 for tasting like art supplies. Another interesting food is called 닭똥집. So one of the most interesting parts to me is the name. So 닭 in Korean is the word for chicken. 똥 means poop, and 집 is house. So 닭똥집, if you put it all together, means chicken shit house. So naturally, these are chicken intestines. They're another pub food. They're served with onions and carrots, and I think it was pretty delicious when I tried it, but my friend and I had been drinking a little bit of soju that night, so that might have altered my perception or my memory of how good I thought the food tasted, but still, I will maintain that I think it tastes very good. On the same night, I tried another food called odorpyo. I've tried to look up exactly what this is, but there seems to be no direct translation that I've been able to find. What I do think it was pork ligaments and tendons in a spicy sauce. I thought it was very delicious. The texture is chewy and crunchy as ligaments and tendons would tend to be. But once again, this experience was colored and brought to you by soju. So I can't be exactly sure if what I was experiencing is true to memory or if it was altered slightly. On a few of these foods, I have a theory, which I will call my escargot theory. Essentially, people rarely seem to eat unpalatable or strange meats on their own. They're typically prepared with lots of sauces or other things. So like escargot, for example, is served usually with lots of garlic and butter. And to me, this almost seems to be hiding the fact that you're eating a snail. So for example, with the dakbar, the chicken's feet, the attraction I don't think is eating chicken's feet themselves, but eating something that is so remarkably spicy. With the old dolpia, the ligaments and tendons, I don't think this is the case, as I really enjoy the texture of them. So maybe my theory is flawed. The last food that I will talk about is called sanakji. I first learned about this food when I watched a very famous Korean movie called Old Boy. If you have not seen this movie, there is a scene in the movie where the protagonist goes into a hoi restaurant, a raw fish restaurant, and he eats a live octopus whole. Shortly after seeing this, I learned that this was an actual practice in Korea, so I was intrigued and decided to try it. And while I didn't go for the whole octopus experience, my experience was still very exciting. So essentially what this is it's an octopus that is cut up very quickly by the chef and rushed to your table. So all the tentacles are still wriggling around and squirming as you eat them. And you can dip them in salty or spicy sauces, which cause the neurons to conduct, causing the tentacles to squirm even more. So it was definitely an interesting experience. As someone who likes to eat raw fish, the taste wasn't really anything too new, but the experience of your food trying to grab onto your tongue and your cheek as you're eating it is definitely a little bit different. It was also exhilarating in the fact that you have to chew the tentacles thoroughly, as there's a possibility that they can latch onto your throat and cause you to asphyxiate, causing your food to gain vengeance on you as you're eating it, which is sort of poetic. So those are some of the stranger foods that I have tried while living in Korea, and while I have crossed quite a few foods off of my list, there are still a few that I want to try. So for example, there is kebul, which is a species of marine spoonworm that looks like a penis. Bokka, which is more widely known as fugu. It's the Japanese name for a pufferfish that is horrendously poisonous. The toxin in this fish blocks the intake of sodium into neurons, and this is an important bodily function for things like moving and breathing and living, so eating it could be exhilarating. I also would like to try horse meat, as it's a very popular meat in Jeju. There was actually a restaurant near one of my old schools that had a horse statue out front. Naively, I thought that this was just a lovely decoration, but it turned out that this was an indicator that this meat was actually served in the restaurant. The more you know. And the last food that I have on my list, and this might be a little controversial, is dog meat. But I haven't truly thought whether or not I will follow through on this, as it might cross a personal line for me or an ethical line for me, or might be beyond my comfort zone. But I suppose that I will jump off that bridge as I approach it. So now I've made myself very hungry, so I'm going to go eat. Thank you for watching.